You're watching the SegPay News Network. Today we're talking the Take It Down Act with attorney Corey Silverstein. Hello again, it's Mark Pettit in the SegPay studio here in the United States, where we're following another breaking development in the world of compliance and regulation as it relates to online merchants, especially in the high-risk category. It's called the Take It Down Act. And here to help explain it to us is our legal expert, Corey Silverstein. Corey, thank you so much for joining us again.
A pleasure's all mine. It's always fun to be here with you.
All right, let's talk about this Take It Down Act. What is it, Corey, and what does it mean for merchants?
Well, we've entered into a world where the federal government recognized that there was an issue with non-consensual content and AI content. And in essence, what the federal government recognized was that there was an issue where victims of people that were submitting someone's non-consensual content, revenge porn, or even AI content now, wherein someone is taking someone's body face from an everyday picture and turning them into some sort of scenario that they didn't consent to be in. The federal government recognized that there was a immediate problem because the longer that such content was online, the more damage was being caused. And so the federal government ultimately, and this was frankly President Trump's wife's baby. She actually really pushed this through. So ultimately they came up with this law called the Take It Down Act, which now creates very specific regulations and specific things that website operator platforms have to adhere to in order to stay out of some pretty serious trouble.
Well, let's talk about that. So the enforcement part just went into effect in the last 30 days. What does that mean for merchants exactly, and specifically in the adult space?
Well, the bottom line is that if you are operating a platform that this particular act covers, and this particular act is going to cover platforms like social media platforms, user-submitted content platforms, forums, really any sort of platform where people can upload content is where we're going to see the majority of the action here. But ultimately, if you are a website operator and you operate a platform like that, this already affects you. The time is now. We are in the enforcement period now, so this law is in full force and effect. And so if you haven't taken steps to be in compliance with this and do what the act requires, you are already in the hot zone.
Wow. So the most contentious part of this, I've heard, Corey, is the 48-hour period, right? You have 48 hours to take action.
Correct. You have 48 from the time that that someone sends you a take it down notice. You have 48 hours to have the content removed. If the platform does not have the content removed within that 48-hour period, the person can then go to the FTC, make a complaint, and at which point the website operator could be in a hell of a lot of trouble. Fines start in excess of $50,000, and of course there actually is a criminal liability component attached to this law, so it is very serious. The 48-hour rule is not some, it's not some period of time that's been picked out of a hat. This is not something for platforms to be messing around with.
So, Corey, seriously, $50,000 per violation.
Yeah, it's actually penalties up to $53,088 per violation. So I was a little light when I said 50,000. But the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, has been tasked with being the police force for this particular law. The FTC has historically been the consumer protection arm of the federal government. So this isn't new territory for them. They've dealt with laws like this. They know how to do it. And the FTC can be very aggressive. And when you start talking about numbers of, $53,000 plus per violation, that's very serious. And then of course, you have the criminal component to this as well, hanging over someone's head. So this is very serious business. This is not something that can be taken lightly.
All right, let's talk about the kind of websites and merchants that should be paying attention.
Yep. So this takes us to the actual type of content, and whether you're an adult entertainment business or whether you're not, isn't really the question, because that's not what's going to determine whether you're a platform that this law applies to. Really, what this law is going to apply to is any platform that allows for user-generated content. And so what we're talking about here is we're talking about dating sites, we're talking about tube sites, we're talking about message boards, and the list goes on. There is a sub-issue to this, Mark, that's in this law, and the law is actually very specific that it's not just a matter of taking it down within 48 hours, but website operators are actually required to have very distinct separate and clear Take It Down Act policies, which is different because a lot of people are used to having all sorts of different policies on their website, but this is a new one. This is now in addition to the other website policies that you have. You are now going to need your Take It Down policy. If you don't have that policy, that alone could render you in violation of the law.
So not even having a policy in place is a violation.
Correct. The law requires that there actually be a policy in place that so that a user who's looking to make a claim, to make a Take It Down claim, can find where to go on the website, so that, it's pretty clear. It can't be something that is hidden to the point where it's impossible for a user to make the complaint. Otherwise, the platform could have serious problems.
Sounds like your phone's going to be ringing off the wall here, Corey.
It already is.
So how in the world do you even develop a policy? Where do you find the language for that? You can't just AI this, right? ChatGPT.
No, we don't, let's be honest. We're seeing a lot of, people trying to use ChatGPT and Claude, and everyone, thinks that it's smart to try to save a legal buck by using these, whatever AI spits out, but that is not the way to go. These policies need to be made so that they are congruent with the other terms and policies, so they don't conflict with your other terms and policies. So we develop them for our clients specifically. We write them up, we provide them to our clients so that our client has a Take It Down Act policy that we believe will comply with the law. And if push came to shove, that the FTC ever wanted to challenge us on it, we would be in a position where we could defend and be able to make the argument that we did everything we were supposed to do to give consumers the ability to raise their Take It Down Act request.
So this is not a Claude. This is not a GPT. You better find some legal help here to do this right.
The FTC is not messing around. They are not messing around. They are eager to put this thing to work. They are eager to start busting people for this thing. They recognize this as a massive area of concern, and this is not something that people should just be saying, well, we'll wait to see what happens with it, or we'll wait to see once the government starts aggressively pursuing it. This is not that sort of law. This is something that needs to be complied with, and it needs to be complied with right now.
Does the FTC have that enforcement power? Are the teeth there, Corey?
Yes, the teeth are absolutely there. The FTC has long been able to flex its muscles, and ultimately the FTC has the power to initiate what are called civil investigations, which they do literally every single day. They have the ability to assess very strong amounts of fines. They have the ability to bring charges against a company in federal court. They then have the arm of the federal court to be able to enforce anything that they're trying to enforce. And they have historically been very aggressive. They know what they're doing. I've gone against the FTC on numerous occasions now for numerous different clients, and I can tell you that these guys, they know what they're doing. We're not talking about a small town law enforcement agency with a sheriff's office of 2 people. That's not what we're dealing with here. We're dealing with a very organized federal agency that has the wherewithal to know exactly what resources and muscles they have to cause all sorts of problems for you if they decide that's what they want to do. And I'll tell you that in my experience, in most cases, once the FTC comes knocking on your door, they typically don't walk away for free, i.e., as soon as you're under investigation by the FTC, the typical end result is you are going to be paying some form of fine. You are going to be dealing with them for quite some time as they go through the investigation process, because their investigative powers are tremendous. They have the ability to ask for all sorts of internal documents about the inner workings of your site, communications, etc. So it's the real deal.
And Corey, is this a one-page policy? Is it a multi-page policy? What are we talking about here?
No, it's actually, it's not that overly complicated. The crux of a Take It Down Act policy is really being able to explain to consumers, this is where you go if you have a Take It Down request. And, here's what the law says, that within 48 hours, we have to take it down and provide information. This is where the counter argument to this law kicks in. The counter argument to this law is that it is going to be highly abused. And that is going to be a very unfortunate part of this law, because there's nothing built into it that says that there's any sort of ability for, a counter notice similar to what we have in DMCA notices. Ultimately, if you don't take the content down when you receive the complaint, even if the complaint is ultimately fake, fraudulent, or being done just for some sort of harassing purpose or competitor, purpose, you're still on the line. So there is definitely a major hole in this particular law where I believe abuse of it is going to be, it's going to be substantial.
What about false accusations? Is there a penalty the other way if I claim you're misusing my image and it's not true?
Nope. When
Wow.
that is the simple that's the simple answer to it. Unfortunately, then you're leaving the accused to then have to go around chasing someone who's an alleged victim, which usually never ends up very well. And also, what we've seen historically in the courts, the standard that the courts put on someone to claim that a report, and I'm talking about the DMCA here because that's really the closest thing that we have to compare it to in terms of takedown procedures. The federal courts have not been very kind to people filing DMCA abuse lawsuits. And I think we're going to see the same thing here, where I don't think the courts are going to be too sympathetic to website operators who, ultimately get a false complaint. So there's a substantial hole and a substantial problem with this law. It was one of the things that I had warned the industry about while the law was being developed and was coming. And I said this was going to be a substantial problem, and it already is. We're already seeing it. Numerous of my clients are already reporting fake false complaints on a daily basis, where the real intent is someone who just wants to get their content taken down. So they're just abusing this and claiming that they fall under this law when they
Yeah.
don't.
Because it could be somebody that's ashamed of the content they did previously, right? Or
Well,
embarrassed.
that's unfortunately how the tool is being used. We're seeing that the tool is being abused by content creators that have now changed their mind. Listen, it is only natural that someone who might have been comfortable with making certain types of content at a certain point have changed their mind years later for whatever reason. It could be for matrimonial reasons, relationship, religious, whatever. The list goes on and on and on. But ultimately, yes, it happens. Human beings change their mind, and then they want to try to find the easiest way to have their whatever's out there removed. And the Take It Down Act is going to give them frankly, a very simple way to do it, because that 48-hour rule is tight. And website operators not only have to have a policy, but they have to be enforcing this. And it's going to be tricky. There's no exceptions, because it's, a complaint comes in at midnight on a Friday, and it just so happens, no one's at the office and doesn't see it until Monday. If you blow the 48 hours, you blow the 48 hours. So this is going to be, a big deal, where website operators are going to have to actually, whether it's a combination of automated tools or live people, regardless, it's not going to matter what time of day it is. They are going to have the people and technology to remove this content, or they will be potentially subject to liability.
I didn't get your email. It's not going to work here, right?
It is not, and again, this is where the entire thing gets very, very complicated, and where it's going to be very easy to abuse. And that's the unfortunate part of it. I understand what the federal government is trying to accomplish. I understand what their concerns are. I understand what their goals are, but I do not believe this was the right way to do it. This was another unfortunate situation where the federal government really pushed this through. They pushed it through fast and hard. And, unfortunately, now we're stuck with this, and there's problems with it. I believe there's going to be massive issues with this, but we are where we are, and platforms need to be taking care of this. And just to add to that, I would tell you that most banks and billing processors are now aware of the Take It Down Act, and they are adding the Take It Down Act to their list of
boxes that must be checked, right? So that was my next question, Corey, is that SegPay constantly works to help its merchants stay compliant. Is this one of the new boxes that will be checked? And could this affect their ability to be approved?
Yes, I do. I do believe that where this is heading, and not just for SegPay, it's going to be for all banks, processors, is ultimately this is going to be one of the items that your processor is going to be looking for. And if they can't check that box, it could be a reason why your application will ultimately be denied. It's new, but I would tell you this particular law, Mark, the media attention in the mainstream has been significant. The source of this law was the sitting president of the United States' wife. This is her baby.
Mm-hmm.
She, and so we're not talking about any shortage of ability to get media attention to this thing. There's been attention about this law on virtually every major news network. So it's going to be very difficult for people to say, hey, I never heard of this. I don't even know what you're talking about. The coverage has been there. And I, for one, believe that the federal government is very eager to put this thing to work. And by the time that this episode airs, there's a potential that there's already been an enforcement action. I believe in enforcement action against someone, entity, person, whatever. I believe it's imminent. It's absolutely going to happen. The FTC wants to put this to work. Federal prosecutors others want to put this thing to work. So it's a virtual guarantee that it's going to happen. This is not a
Somebody's
question.
going to get it. And there will be probably a big named platform just to make attention for this, right?
Yeah, yes, and there's a lot of celebrities that have been very concerned about this. There's been a lot of very large A-list celebrities. We're not going to go through names. There's no sense of doing that, but there's been a ton of them that have voiced their support for this particular law, and have for years been arguing that they've been damaged by this. We've seen this because of all the celebrity, we call it the fake celebrity content. It's celebrities' faces on various different people's bodies, or now that we have AI, it's astonishing how advanced and how quickly AI technology has come that it can create virtually the person. I mean, to the point where even the person is like, oh my God, is that really me naked?
Wow.
I can't even tell the difference. That's how far, and how quickly this area of technology is developing.
Is there any difference, Corey, as far if it's AI generated or human generated? Does it matter, or is it all the same enforcement?
No, it's the same enforcement. It's whether AI creates it or whether it's a human that sits there using, their own Photoshop technology or whatever it is they're using to do this. It's virtually the same thing, and it's going to apply to any user submitted content. So, this is something that, yes, AI was a big final push towards getting this thing through, but the test isn't whether it's AI or not AI. It's again, is it user submitted content? Does it contain someone's non-consensual content? That's where, the test really starts.
So this is US based now. Is this going to happen in other regions of the world?
Well, it's a US law, but the FTC has historically taken the position that they can enforce their laws against anyone who engages in any business with even a single US consumer. Let's say you have a Portuguese-based website and the FTC decides that that Portuguese website does business in the US with US customers. I believe there absolutely is an argument that this law is enforceable against that Portuguese company.
That is incredible. So this is worldwide. This could have a worldwide ripple effect. All right, Corey, let's pull out the crystal ball. What's coming next in the world of regulation? What can we expect to happen?
Oh man, I mean that's a tough one. But what I can tell you is that the push for a federal age verification law is well on the way. It's moving. It continues to gain momentum. I believe it is inevitable. There are federal lawmakers on both sides of the aisle, i.e., this is going to be bipartisan, that do believe in this particular issue. So I do believe we will be getting to the point where state age verification laws aren't going to be the daily subject, because we're going to have a federal age verification law that's going to cover the entire United States.
And you heard it here first. Corey Silverstein, thank you so much for joining us. We always enjoy having you on the show and getting your expert legal advice.
My pleasure, and thank you for having me.
And if you haven't already, please like and subscribe to our channel and stay tuned for more great content just like this right here on the SegPay News Network.